Charlie, we got Siraj on the line. What do you want to ask him?
You've seen every investor that's been successful. What are one or two skills that they have that everyone should have, or at least start working on?
Yeah. The one that I think of kind of right top of my head is perseverance and persistence. And I think that it's been instilled into me as soon as I immigrated to the States, because we had to work, I would say, 5 times as hard as the average American to learn English, to understand this system and that system. So perseverance and persistence is what kind of kept me going. So it's really sticking through. And if you have a goal in mind, you got to figure out a way to solve it and get to it. And you'll, of course, hit challenges along the way, but it's sticking through it and figuring out new solutions to get to the same goal.
I'm Brian Briscoe, host of the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. And this podcast is different than everything else out there. I bring together a new and an experienced investor on each episode, and I let the aspiring investor ask the questions that they need answered. So if you're an aspiring investor yourself, you probably will have the exact same questions. Now, before we get to this episode, make sure you hit the subscribe button below and that little bell to make sure you get notified every time we post a new episode. And now, enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe. Got a very exciting show lined up for you guys today. I'm excited about it. It's another one of our Ask the Expert episodes. We've got our experienced investor, Siraj Ahmed, on with us, and aspiring investor, Charlie Harrison. So, gentlemen, welcome to the show today.
Yeah, Brian, thank you so much for having us. Super excited to be here and add value to Charlie and everyone else.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's some fun.
That's what it's about. We'll have a little bit of fun. We'll add some value, and it'll be a worthwhile 30, 40 minutes. So, Siraj, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with kind of like, the background, and then I'll go into where I am now and where I'm headed next. I come from a immigrant family. I moved into the States in 2001-ish. So right from the get-go, it was how can you go out and go to college, go get a job, retire at that 65, and just kind of keep plugging away. And along the way, I was working a full-time job. I started to invest in real estate kind of just as a side hustle, and really just stumbled upon it. It was kind of essentially even maybe forced into it. And so while I'm working a full-time job, I was just kind of building up smaller side hustles. I did various businesses since I was probably 17 years old. Since then, I was doing, smaller side hustles. Some failed, some were successful. But all along the way, what I noticed was that since I was investing into real estate, even as a part-time, that's the one that was the most consistent and kept producing results along the way. Mm-hmm. And the businesses, either they had failed along the way or some were successful. So I realized that real estate was the calling. I got my CPA. Right after that, I went into Deloitte & Touche and consulting side, financial consulting. And I was there for quite some time. And it was a very, very rigorous job. Consulting is known to be travel Monday morning out, Thursday night come in. It was a lot of just time commitment. And so real estate was kind of taking a back seat. And I had the desire, and I kept growing, kept, buying new things, bigger things. And eventually kind of came to a point where it was like do I continue this W-2 route, or do I kind of go full time into what I'm doing? And so right after COVID, it felt like it was like the right time, and just made the move and just decided to just close that chapter of the W-2 and moved on to real estate full time. So, experience wise, I started in condos and townhouses and buying those as rentals. And, back when I started buying in 2013 or 14 was the first year. So at that time, we were kind of still in the downturn. So you were buying stuff for 70% off, sometimes even through auctions and such, buying all cash, and moved from condos, townhouses, flipped even for a couple of years, flipped a couple of apartment buildings, then moved back into rentals on the smaller multifamily, and now just focusing on commercial side. And sometimes occasionally I'll still look at opportunistic smaller multifamily deals too, if it just falls in your lap and it's in the right strategic area, and we execute on those too. That's kind of how it all happened.
Yeah. Now, a couple of things there. I mean, I had a couple of points in my career where, I may have been traveling like a consultant, and I'll tell you what, for me at first, it was fun getting back on that plane, every week or every other week. It just ended up, the fun kind of wore off really quick.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's funny you say that, Brian. Like when I used to tell people, I'm at Deloitte, and like some of the friends, like at least in my earlier career, right, they would be like, oh man, so you must be traveling every week. Oh man, you're racking up all those points and miles. And trust me, those are the perks, but those perks start to get old after some time, especially when you're doing the Monday morning out, 6 a.m. flights, and then coming back Thursday late nights. So you miss everything in the middle. Nothing bad to say about the firm I was at. The people I used to work with were great. And even the partners I used to work with, we were very flexible. And I think I always valued flexibility. So one of my main important things was I had to be back on Thursday nights for basketball. Like, that was one of the most important things. So, they knew that, I had to be back. And so I would fly out on a 3 p.m. flight so that I'm back into Chicago by 5 or 6 so that I can get ready for a gym. So flexibility was always one of the most important things. And I think that's one of the reasons why I kind of transitioned into full-time real estate.
Yeah. And you say something about the points. It's kind of interesting. Maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way, but if you're tired of spending 50 to 60 nights in a hotel, the last thing you want to do is use your points and, hey, I'm going to go stay in a hotel again, but I guess you can use it for, family and play and other stuff. And
Right.
that's done. I still have enough frequent flyer miles for a couple of tickets and enough hotel points for a couple of weeks, depending on where we stay. But my wife and I one thing I promised her, when I first got into multifamily, and this was kind of like the compromise we had, it was basic. I was working full time and I told her this is what I want to do. And it's going to come with sacrifice. It's going to come with, I'm going to be busy at nights. The compromise we had is after we got our first deal, I'd take her to Rome. Well, we got our first deal about 3 months before COVID shut the world down. So I still owe her a trip to Rome. And I was just checking last week. I've got enough frequent flyer miles to fly one of us, round trip to Rome, and enough frequent flyer miles to, stay at Marriott's, for a week and a half. There are some definite perks to living that lifestyle, but so anyway, that said, enough about me. Back to you, Siraj. Let's talk more about you. So, you made the transition, COVID kind of helped that decision. You have kind of a variety of things that you're investing in, single family, condo, small multifamily. Let's talk more specifically about your why. You touched upon it, but let's go a little deeper. What's your big burning why?
Yeah, definitely. I might have kind of alluded to it earlier, it was the flexibility. So flexibility is very important. Because I was traveling so much, I realized that I valued my time. On Fridays, I really wanted to do the things that I really wanted to do or spend time with family, friends, all that. And we were very social as a couple and always wanted to have that time available to go enjoy experiences, this, that, and the other. So the flexibility was super important. And so now with having kids, I feel that flexibility is even more important. Last week, in the middle of the week, we went to a pumpkin farm, or the whole fall October activities, or taking my daughter to soccer class, or even if it's things for myself. One of the things that I said this summer I'm going to do is go out biking in the middle of the daytime to kind of relax my brain and just get away. And so having that flexibility was one. And the other thing I think was really this thing that I was kind of ingrained with because I moved to the States and, we were kind of this immigrant mentality that, you got to get a job, you got to work this amount of years, and then, you keep investing into index funds and you keep getting this return. And by the time you're 65, you'll have $1 million in your bank account or in your IRA, and, you could use that. So I think it was really just to get away from that because that just wasn't sitting well with me. I think this is why I kept trying side hustles, this business, that business. So it was just to get away from that completely is why that desire is there. The motivation and that fire is still there. I don't think I'm at a point where I'm just like, I'm kind of done and completely retired and kind of walk away. It's continuing to build a portfolio and bring it to the point where it's truly passive and truly, Brian, business too, you'll understand, it's not completely passive ever. So for people who think that, real estate is like, you just sit back and kind of collect this rent check that's coming in, it's not. Even if you have a third-party property management in place.
Yeah. I mean, if you are an LP, it can be completely passive, but the road we're on, and people who listen to this show, that they're typically not the ones that want to be the LPs. I'll tell you what, I've been able to see a road to becoming completely passive through real estate though. Our first acquisition was 2019. So it was actually 3 years and 4 days ago that we had our first acquisition. It was 2 properties. We're selling those properties now. And when you start looking at, how the income comes in, when you get a GP position, when you sell, that's typically when you make a little money from acquisition fee, but I've made a lot of money this year from properties that have sold, more money than we need to run the household. And what this affords you is you can take that money and start investing it passively, so you can transition from an active to a passive investor from those GP positions or from those exits, because if you do things right, when you exit, you make a decent amount of money.
I think even more so, now that you have experienced the GP side, when you're probably vetting out another GP or a sponsor, I think you'll be even more ready to find the right one.
Yeah. Tell you what, I remember Dan Hanford, he's going to actually, we're recording with him next week, but remember when I was a brand new syndicator, Dan Hanford put a series of red flags when looking for syndicators. And me being the brand new syndicator, I hated that series because 3 out of his like 8 red flags applied directly to me. And I'm like, gosh, but now going back and looking at the same thing, I hate to say it, Charlie, you may not want to hear this, but brand new syndicators, it's a risk, it really is.
It is.
So yeah, when I go back to my investment philosophy, I look at, man, all the mistakes we made in our first couple of acquisitions, unfortunately we had tailwinds to keep us up. Lots of hustle, a lot of work, a lot of mistakes, and hopefully on the back end, you come out standing alive and unscathed.
Yeah, but I'm sure now if you look at that list, Brian, I'm sure those, you said 3 out of the 8 you were, or set, what is it, 6 out of the 8 you were on,
Yeah.
but maybe now it's the opposite probably.
Now hopefully it is the opposite. Hopefully red flags apply to me, but I'll actually dig up those posts. I think it was a couple, anyway, I'll dig up those posts and see how many still apply. Hopefully 0. Anyway, Siraj, let's talk a little bit about your portfolio. Pick one of your favorite assets and let's talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, definitely. I'll go with one of the projects that we were almost done with it. And this was a cool, very cool project. So one of the things that I've kind of done along the way, I was kind of thinking about what my strengths are and, who the right demographic that I'm trying to buy from. It's always been, I'm trying to buy properties from older people because, like those to me have worked out so well. And this was like, even when I was buying condos and my smaller stuff, all the way up to the big stuff, I noticed that the older owners, they always kept the properties great from the exterior. So all the big CapEx was done from the exterior and really you just had to worry about the interior updating of the units. So upon walking through, so this deal we're talking about is it's a 10 unit out in the Chicago area. So yeah, one of the things is I buy in the Chicago area primarily. That's one of the things that I did not mention during my introduction. And I think that buying in Chicago, like a lot of them, it's not the most attractive right now for most investors. You don't hear most syndicators talking about Chicago, but I will say that, I have not seen us fall on the list or any bad list, right? Like the ones that are migrations dropping or move out, like the greatest move outs. So because of that, I think Chicago is very consistent. Like it's just this all the way. So our rent, we still get great rent growth and we still get, the consistency that we want. And of course, you got to look within the submarkets too of the specific, like in Chicago, like I don't buy the proper city of Chicago. I buy in the suburbs of Chicago where, we have good schools, still good migration coming in and where people do want to live. I think I use that to my advantage, versus like the other syndicators that are kind of running away from Chicago. And me being local, one of the things that I kind of learned in the businesses that I did is the ones that were passive or kind of passed over to another partner, those for me did not perform or at least ended in an unsuccessful exit. So one of the things that I kind of realized that I think I need to be able to see the asset, or if I need to, go over there within an hour, I can get there. So that's one of the things that I've kind of implemented in my business is I think for now I'm going to continue buying in the Chicago area. Okay, sorry, let me go back to the deal. I kind of diverted.
Now, if you don't mind, a lot to unpack there, and there's a couple of things that I want to highlight that you said. That was very dense in gold nuggets for people listening. Number one, something I've never heard before. You have an avatar for your seller. A lot of people have avatars for their investors. And I love that you said that. You have this ideal seller in mind, and so when you're going to look for properties, you know what you're looking for and you know what their pain points are and what strings to pull. Right. Number two, Chicago is not very popular for outside syndicators, which gives you you've got a competitive advantage because you're there. Absolutely. And something I'll note about Chicago, it is on the tier 1 list of lenders. They're going to give you the best rates and terms out of every market. It's on the same tier as your Los Angeles, your Dallases, your Miamis, your New York. So you're going to get the best rates and terms on loans, which right now is especially important. So, and then you're taking an advantage, like I said, competitive advantage. You are local, you're in the market, the market, and you're probably very aware of the landlord tenant laws, which I think Illinois in general is very tenant friendly, and Chicago extremely tenant friendly.
Even more,
which may be why you're in the suburbs. So anyway, just wanted to unpack some of the things you said and make sure people realize that they just got a bunch of gold nuggets. So anyway, now let's talk about the product.
So this deal at a high level. So it's 10 units in the downtown of this suburb and right across from the metro station. So, and the way I think that the other fascinating thing, though, the reason why I like this deal is because, all the seeds that you kind of planted right along the way, which is what I think, like real estate is to me at least, is a very long-term game. And one of the things I learned is like, it's not an overnight success. You continue to plant these seeds and then they'll eventually produce. So over the last 4 years, I have networked with tons of brokers, and I still continue to, like, every month, month and a half, I still talk to these brokers and see if I can get deals from them. And I'm not talking like the large brokers, I'm talking smaller brokers, like the guys that even do like smaller multifamily or even the single family homes, because they stumble upon these deals and they don't know how to value them, and then they'll sell you these deals at such a lower cost basis. So I'll tell you about this deal. It was a 10-unit building in downtown Lisle. Now, Lisle, which is right next to Naperville, like a big, very big suburb. Lisle is like a average household income is like over 100,000. All demographics fit well for it. It's the right suburb to be in. School districts are phenomenal. So when I told people that I'm buying this property at $70,000 a unit, like, brokers are like, whoa, what the, like that. And the reason why I was able to get this deal is because the broker that brought it to me is not a commercial broker. He buys and sells single family homes. And so a cousin of his wife knew the seller and had said, hey, my uncle's trying to sell this building, and, he's looking to retire and completely done with it. And so the first person that pops up in his mind is Siraj. So, he sends me, I'm not joking, it was 11:30 p.m. and he sent me a message on WhatsApp with just like the price, this is the rent income, the total, and then like, the expenses were like, what you would expect, like, here's the insurance and here's the property taxes, figure out the rest, right? And so the price that he gave me, literally, I'm not joking, within 5 minutes, I said, put an LOI in right now. And he's like, hey, and he said, what's an LOI? Wow. Okay, so that tells you the person that I was, buying from. So I said, put an LOI in right now at this price, and then we'll figure out the rest. I haven't even looked at it yet because this price per unit makes sense. So why was that important? Is because I knew my market. I knew exactly what I'm buying, and no matter how much renovation it needed, I would have been okay because I knew like right away. And that's one of the things I think I use Chicago to my advantage, is that I know all these markets and what the price per unit should be approximately. So we put an LOI in. It takes, a lot of back and forth. At some point the seller says, I don't know if I want to sell it. I might give it to my son, etc. Eventually we get to a deal, we close it. And I'm walking through this building, again, phenomenal shape. The owner that sold it to me, 85 or 86 years old now. And, upon walking through the units, he's showing me every single thing that he's done. Like, he's like, oh, Siraj, look at this. I changed this, I changed that. I did this with my own hand, this, that. He's owned it for the last 40 years. So, and he always told me he actually used to have a portfolio, and this was his last asset remaining. And he said, this is my trophy asset. And I can understand why, because it's in this nice corner right next to this very, very vibrant area. So we eventually close and we start the renovation on it. And, we've spent about $250,000 into it. And the exterior looks nice. We've raised the rents. Like, this was the best part for me, at least. I'm a financial numbers guy, so this was important to me. When we bought it, the rent roll was about $96,000. At this point, I just checked the rent roll yesterday. We're at $142,000 for the year. Nice. So we have raised in theory, we've raised the value of it by 40%. But of course, taking the expenses and stuff like that, it's less than that. But I know that this building is worth significantly more now. The buildings that are around the area, something that just sold for about $126,000 a unit that I bought for $70,000 a unit. So I could essentially, double my money on this almost if I was to refinance it. But so we finished all the renovation, we've raised the rents, everything. The building is almost at stabilization, and we were looking to refinance it, but with the current rates and current market and stuff like that, I decided to hold off that. And I'm so glad that I went with the correct debt on it, the correct leverage, which is so important. And we didn't do a bridge debt, and instead we ended up doing a long-term fixed debt, 3.75 locked in for the next 5 years. And we had a construction loan component to it. At this point, I would have loved to refinance my money out and get all of it back. But at this point, we're just going to hold it out for the next couple of years and see what the feds do. And hopefully, I'm seeing from what I'm hearing from the markets, sounds like something next year, late next year, we should start to see, the rates go the other way. So I'm hopeful that happens, and we'll kind of refinance that project. And I think Brian asked me, why was this, like, tell me about your favorite project or something. To me, this was like the most, for some reason, it just has like a good attachment to me because, the seller said this was his trophy asset. And I feel this is becoming my trophy asset. It's in a great area. There's demand there. I've already gotten multiple phone calls for it about, selling it because people have seen like the exterior completely changed. This used to be a sided building that had brick underneath it. So we've removed it and made it into a super modern, nice, dark gray looking, cool looking building. So I'm really excited for it.
Nice. And I'll unpack a lot of things there. I love the whole thing. I mean, debt, getting the right debt is so important in what you're doing. And, I know a lot of people, in the last couple of years have gone towards bridge loans. And a lot of those people right now, some of those people are right now regretting the bridge loans that they had. Fixed rate debt, it's safer is the answer. It is definitely safer. There's obviously some pros and cons no matter what you do, but getting a long-term fixed rate is safer. And we had a couple of properties that we got long-term fixed rate debt on, and the prepayment penalty was so high that we couldn't take advantage of the markets. But now where rates are, man, that loan appraisal looks really good to prospective buyers. So there's one thing. And then something else that I think was a real gem is being able to make an offer without seeing, T12, without seeing rent roll. And you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
If you know an area and you know what the prices are, you know what the rents are, you know what expenses in that area look like, you can underwrite and make an offer on a property without seeing a single one of the owner's documents. Just look at the property. You know what the average expenses are in that area. You know what property taxes look like. You know what insurance looks like. You know what to expect for maintenance and for utilities and everything else. You know what to expect for rent. You can underwrite the property, come up with a purchase price, and be confident there. So,
Absolutely.
Love that. Love that you mentioned that, and that's something that I think a lot of the newer aspiring investors don't realize yet. But people with a little bit of experience, they've been there, and they're like, "Yeah, that's a good price. I know it is."
Yeah.
That said, shift gears a little bit. What's next for you?
Yeah. What's next for me? So one of the biggest goals for this year, which it's like I feel kind of unsuccessful saying, is that, one of the things was I wanted to double my portfolio count, portfolio unit count this year. Unfortunately, we have not been able to hit that, and it's already October. And it's not because we have not looked at enough deals. I think we've looked at more deals that we have than ever. However, we just haven't been able to close on the correct ones for one reason or another. The deals haven't worked out. So one of the goals this year still remains, and I'm still hopeful that we will find something, right, is to double the portfolio count. That's number one. The other thing that I've kind of started to look into is other asset classes. With these brokers, I kind of mentioned to you guys that I work with smaller brokers sometimes, and the smaller brokers will sometimes bring me deals that are retail or office. Now, office is a scary asset, but if you're buying it at the right price, I still think that it could work with the right tenant in place. And same thing with the retail. So that's one of the second things that we're looking at. And then the other thing is really solidifying the business, like as an overall. So 2021 was a pivotal year for me, at least. Why? Because this was the first full year in business, full time in real estate. So it kind of shaped and it kind of clarified and it kind of gave validity to everything that I was doing, right? Because it told me that, like, hey, look, the way you were finding deals is working out. The way you were connecting with brokers worked out. You were able to raise money. You were able to refinance out the projects. So a lot happened in 2021, which really gave me the comfort and the validity to say, you know what, now I can go on and do bigger and bigger projects. And so that's the goal is, for 2020 now in 2023 is to be building a bigger business, build bigger brand. And the other thing is growing the team. That's kind of something that I have kind of dragged on, and I don't know if I would say intentionally, but it's something that's kind of just taken a back seat. Having the right team. So this year brought on 2 people, VAs. So they're doing multiple facets of the business. Now it's hiring someone local that's going to be like my full-time maintenance and full-time construction guy. So having that kind of really under my payroll, instead of we still have like one construction team that we use all of our projects, but I want to bring them in-house. So that's the next thing. So really building the team around it. And then the last thing I think is some sort of building a brand. So if I continue to build the team, I think I can get more time to build a brand, bring the social presence into it, which of course, why would I do it is just really to get more deals, get more deal flow, get more investors, all that kind of stuff. So it's really just to build a brand around Siraj and the brand. I mean, and Brian, you were at the conference, so, you had talked about Siraj being the face of it rather than the Advantage Capital, which is the company. So really it's about that. And the last thing is now the social impact. Right. I think we are doing good. One of the things that in 2021 that happened is in Chicago, at least, there were some refugees that were coming from Afghanistan. And I had gotten reached out by one of the organizations and said, hey, do you have 10 units available right now that we could take on for these refugees? And I felt, unfortunately, I didn't have that available, and didn't even think about that in place. So it's one of the things is, could I have, while making money, is there a way to have some sort of a social impact and do good at the same time? So, we've taken on organizations that we work with that are like, mental health tenants that we've taken on. We do Section 8. So it's also kind of giving back, but while at the same time being profitable, so that's one of the things that I'm going to continue to do.
Love it. Love it. A lot of things going on there, a lot of goodness. So excited to see how things turn out, how your growth, skyrockets from here. So
thank you.
That said, shifting gears, Charlie, welcome to the show today.
Yeah, thank you guys. And Siraj, that literally already have a page of notes. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love it.
Charlie,
Love it.
Yeah, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Charlie Harrison here in the Greenville, South Carolina market. And we were kind of talking earlier, Brian, where a lot of your portfolios in my backyard. So when you were talking about that kind of piqued my interest. Father, husband, been married 6 years as of a few weeks ago, and also have a 3-year-old girl. So Siraj and I are talking about having younger kids and building this business to be a part of that long term.
Mm-hmm.
So I've worn many hats the last several years when it comes to real estate. I've been an agent. I've been an inside sales manager. I also did the side hustle with wholesaling. I wholesaled land, a triplex, mobile homes, single family homes, you've named it. But always had some sort of W-2 at some point. And earlier this year, I just started thinking, okay, family's in place, long term, what does this look like? And am I on the right trajectory? So I'd say probably spring, summer of this year, I got reconnected with a local investor here in the area. He's got a super successful wholesaling business. He does flipping, you name it. And I just said, hey, how can I help you? Mm-hmm. He's like, well, we're looking for properties if you want to go out and try to find some. So I literally just went out and started finding land.
Yeah.
It was just the easiest thing to get into. And so I was on Craigslist. I was on Zillow for sale by owner, and I brought him within a month 2 off-market land deals he bought. And he's like, okay, you can do this.
Nice.
I need some help with multifamily. And I have friends who invest in multifamily and been a part of syndications, but I just never really saw that as a direction I wanted to go until probably 2 months ago. I'm sure you guys have heard of Bill Allen,
Yep.
7-figure flipping. He also has a multifamily division.
So, yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, I like him for that. So yeah, good.
There you go. Yeah. And so his name's Von Bethel. He's one of the owners now of the company we're part of. Brought me to that event up in the Nashville area about 2 months ago, and just really opened my eyes to what multifamily can do if you are in the right room with the right people and you have the right resources. And shortly after, he and another investor that are in that group came to me and said, hey, this is what we're thinking. We want to start a multifamily company. We want to scale this, and we need somebody to help find deals.
Yeah.
And I proved myself that way to Vaughn initially. And just after prayer and talking with my wife, we felt like it was too good of an opportunity to turn down. So as of 2 weeks ago, we started Impact Investing. I'm an equity stake owner with them, and my role is finding deals here in the market of South Carolina, but also in Baltimore County, Maryland, where our other co-owner is. And so that's it.
So I love that. Somebody, you basically, hey, how can I add value? I need land. Did you have any background in land purchases?
All I knew about land was what my great grandfather told me years ago, is that, they're not building any more land.
They're not making.
And I went on YouTube. I went and listened to podcasts. And the biggest thing I picked up on was, you can do mailers, you can cold call. And I remember telling my wife, I'm like, hey, I really want to do this on the side.
Yeah.
She said, that's fine, but you're not putting a penny into it.
Yeah.
So I had to get super resourceful. And I literally found the deals on Craigslist and Zillow for sale by owner. One of them was multifamily land. The land was already zoned for 4 separate duplexes to be built.
Perfect. So you got in there, you added value. It wasn't something you were good at, but you figured it out. And that's the recipe that I hear for success over and over and over again. It's like somebody gave me an opportunity. They were willing to show me how to do things. I figured out how I could add value to them, and I figured it out, and so I love that. I think that's very inspiring. I think if you're listening to this right now, that's the recipe to get to where you want to go. Find somebody who needs help, figure out how to help them, and you'll get in. So anyway, that said, let's talk real quick about your why. What's your big burning why?
Pretty similar to Siraj. When it comes to just the flexibility, again, I was a W-2 up until 2 weeks ago. So my schedule was Tuesday to Saturday. So my days off were Sunday, Monday. And so I didn't have typical weekends. My daughter has soccer practice and soccer games during the week. I couldn't take her to preschool, things I envisioned being able to do. And I knew this was one way for me to be able to do that. But also just financially being able to put our family in a place 10, 15, 20 years from now that I know we can be at financially free, have retirement funded, and also just be able to make an impact on others, because we have not done this alone. We've had help along the way, and I want to be able to make an impact with our church, with our community. If years from now somebody needs some help, I'm like, hey, let's give them some money, or let's take time out of our schedule to go help them. You can't do that if you're not on a specific path like we are.
Yeah. So, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, and taking a day off means you don't pay your rent, you can't take a day off. You can't help people if you're stretched thin yourself. So I love it. Well, we got, Jesse, edit this little part out. Just so you guys know, we got 10 minutes till the top of the hour for the questions and answers. Do you guys have something at the top of the hour or not?
Good.
I have 30 minutes extra, so I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll try to end really close to the top of the hour, and then there's usually 2 or 3 minutes on the back end where we talk. This is when the podcast can come out. So anyway, cue it back up here, Jesse, and here we go. So Charlie, we got Siraj on the line. What do you want to ask him?
Well, just a few specific questions. It's in October 2022, and there's a weird market going on. Interest rates are going up. And so I think for someone in my shoes, I want to make the right decisions. I want to get in on the right properties. So I think my first question, how has your experience as a consultant and a CPA, very numbers driven, and numbers are super important, how has that experience helped you build the portfolio you have right now?
Great question. And Charlie, one of the things that you said earlier, honestly, was so golden to me as well, was that you were cornered into, I thought you were cornered because you said, I wanted to do this and I wanted to put money into mailers and something else, and you weren't able to. But somehow our brain is just so fascinating the way it works. When you're kind of cornered into a place, our brain works so creatively. You went on Craigslist and free sources, was able to find 2 deals. I thought that was phenomenal. So great job on that.
Yeah.
Before I even answer that. So going back to your question, it was around the financial mindset. So yeah, that helped me tremendously. I mean, I think that real estate is a numbers game. It's all about what the price that you're buying at, and being able to project the value in the future, and running your income minus expenses and NOI. That's your magic number right there, right? The NOI. That helped me tremendously with the experience of the financial consulting that I had, looking at, the P&Ls all day, every day for various companies, for the top Fortune 500 companies, looking at the P&Ls and being able to understand where we could remove some headcount, where we could remove some extra expenses, basically. And so when I'm looking at these financials, or the detail was presented, I can see that, the rent is this, I can get it to this, and what is it going to take me to get there? It's the delta in between. And that's my money maker right there. And same goes for expenses. Like, if I'm looking at, we were kind of talking about retail and stuff like that, in retail, and when there's like these large firms that are kind of managing these assets, they always have extra overhead that you could probably remove when you're running a smaller and a leaner business. So it's about how could you cut expenses and where, and so that you could increase your net operating income. But at the end of the day, it's really about your revenue. The revenue is your best bet, and how you can increase that. I mean, expenses, you can only go down so much. Revenue is what you could push up. So yeah, it helped me tremendously with the financial background. My wife tells me that I'm staring at this calculator all day and every day. It's simply what it is. I'm a numbers guy. So, that's the first thing I look at.
You said your market so well. That was profound, because I think even myself and our company early on, we're like, we're going to go in North Carolina, and we're going to go in South Carolina and Georgia. And we had the same thing from one of our strategic coaches. He's like, you need to know in your own backyard what rental rates are. Is it a 2-bedroom? Is it a 3-bedroom? Are the renters paying utilities? Are you? And it really hit home when you hear the same thing from multiple people. you should probably pay
Mhm.
attention.
I agree. Now, I'll say something about the numbers thing. I said this a million times, but if you're good at numbers, and I like to use the matrix as the example from 20, 25 years ago, where you see numbers pop out of pictures pop out. That's how I describe it. When you're good at numbers, that's how the spreadsheets go.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my 2 cents on that.
And I'll add
Okay.
something there as well,
Yeah.
which could help really all the listeners, Brian, is that yes, numbers do tell a story, but the reason why something just kind of popped up in my head, Brian, is that we were working on this deal that I was kind of telling you that we haven't been able to close things. So we were under contract on this 14 unit that we were buying near the other building that we own. So, we're always looking for strategic properties, like where can we buy the closest to reduce economies of scale? Anyway, so we were buying this building's 14 unit, and the avatar we were talking about, right, Brian? Here in this case, the avatar that I was buying from, yes, it was an older owner. However, one of the things that I always like to know is how long did the current owner own it? And what was the story behind it? Why is he selling? And in this story, it just wasn't adding up. This property had sold 4 times in the last 12 years. So there was something there to unpack. So yes, the numbers told the story, and I'm not joking. The numbers looked phenomenal on this building, like phenomenal. But upon this building, we had to extend the due diligence by another week, even because my brain just wasn't able to comprehend. Like, man, numbers look so good, but what is the issue here? But upon doing the inspection, really, I put together the story about what had happened here. So it's truly, yes, it's the numbers, but it's also about having an actual walkthrough of the building and understanding what happened, and then putting the story together, because that's what you're going to sell to your investor, or if you have investors, that's what you're going to be selling to them, is what is the business plan, and why are you going to be able to make this building better versus the current operator. I think that was one of the things that was not just the numbers, it's also, so numbers kind of start the game, and you're like, okay, I'm interested in this, but it's also about the next phase of it, which is very, very important too.
What are 1 or 2 skills that you feel like you've seen every investor that's been successful? What are 1 or 2 skills that they have that everyone should have, or at least start working on to be successful?
Yeah. The one that I think of kind of right top of my head is perseverance and persistence. And I think that it's been instilled into me as soon as I immigrated to the States, because we had to work, I would say, 5 times as hard as the average American to learn English, to understand this system and that system. So perseverance and persistence is what kind of kept me going. And I'm not joking, there's very, very bad days sometimes, and it knocks you down. So, for me, like when I'm having a bad day, I kind of just need to go take a half-hour nap and just kind of clear the brain and just kind of start over again. And that's what I do. So it's really sticking through. And if you have a goal in mind, you got to figure out a way to solve it and get to it. And you'll, of course, hit challenges along the way, but it's sticking through it and figuring out new solutions to get to the same goal. So perseverance and persistence, that's, I think, the skill set that is very, very translatable in really everywhere.
Love it. Now we're about out of time, so going to close things up and got one last question for each of you. Siraj, you get to go first. How can listeners learn more about you?
Yeah, I'm probably best available on my Instagram, Siraj88, and I can, answer any questions that anyone might have, or, specific questions that we kind of talked about things here, or any other questions that you guys might have, please reach out there. I'm probably the most accessible there.
All right. So Instagram at Siraj88, and we'll have a link to that in the show notes. So Charlie, same question for you.
Yeah. If you just go on LinkedIn or Facebook, I'm pretty active on both of those. Just typing in my name, Charlie Harrison. Also, I'd love to just give my phone number out. If I can answer any questions, again, I'm no expert whatsoever, but anything I can do to help. I've had a lot of people help me. That is 864-202-4056. Again, would love to help however I can. And Siraj, thank you for your knowledge and dropping the nuggets. Again, pages of notes. So super grateful.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, thanks again for coming on this show, guys. And I had a blast.
Hey, if you like that episode, make sure to subscribe. But more importantly, if you haven't joined our multifamily educational community yet, which we call a Tribe of Titans, you are missing out. Get 30 days free by clicking the link in the description to this episode, or go to thetribeoftitans.info, and we'll see you there.